An interactive open house for planning the future of public transportation will take place tomorrow night in Roxbury. To tell us about the event and ways to participate online is our guest from the state's Department of Transportation, the manager of long-range planning, Scott Hamwey. Thank you very much for being with us, Scott.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Start with what this plan is. I guess it goes up to the year, 2040?
2040, yeah. So it's called Focus 40, and it's the long-term investment plan to position the MBTA to meet the needs of the greater Boston region of the year 2040. And it's an interesting time to be doing this work because, it's well known the T has a lot of near-term challenges that it's trying to address to make sure we can serve the customers of today as best as we can. At the same time, we know this is a very dynamic and growing region, and it's important that the MBTA, positions itself to serve the needs of that future region.
It wasn't so long ago when most of the growth around here was outside of Boston. Now it's the other way around. It's inside. So I guess you've got some interesting things to hear from people in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, really since World War II up until just a decade ago, population growth in the suburbs and the rest of the state was certainly outpacing what was happening in places like Boston, Cambridge, Somerville. We've seen that trend reversed, and you see even ambitious goals like the city's goal to reach a population of 700,000 by the year 2030. Right now, if current trends continue for another couple of years, they might beat that goal by 10 years. So things are really happening quickly now, and it's really critical that the T, which really facilitates a lot of that urban growth, that we make sure we're positioned and prioritizing the right investments to meet that growth.
Well, we hear a lot of public transportation ideas in our show. They go everywhere from whole new transit routes to little tweakings of existing lines. So talk about the kind of things that people could be chipping in tomorrow.
Yeah, we expect it'll run the gamut from, just like you said, when you talk to your everyday transit riders, they tend to, I think, very appropriately focus on what will make their commute better, and that's often just simple things like faster buses or buses coming on time or making it easier to pay. At the same time, because there's so many great thinkers in this region, we have a lot of big ideas that have been around in some cases for several decades, big billion-dollar and up expansion ideas. So we expect we'll hear a lot about those too. But I think the really important thing to try to get people to do is to remember that things are changing fast, and population growth is just one of a number of trends that we're monitoring, and we want to make sure that we don't just assume that what might have been the solutions conceived in years past are still the right solutions for today's problems.
We're talking with Scott Hamwey from the Mass Department of Transportation. Talk about the interactive features of this meeting. What does that mean exactly?
Sure. So this is an open house setting. We're holding it at the Bowling Building in Dudley Square, which we selected that location because we feel like that gives us the best chance to bring in your everyday bus rider. That's actually one of the tough things about doing public process for the T is, a third of our customers are bus riders. It can be very difficult to get your everyday bus rider out to meetings. A lot of them maybe lower income individuals, people working multiple jobs, dealing with childcare issues. So having the meeting in a place like the Bowling Building, we hope gives us the best chance of pulling some of those people in. But in terms of the interactive elements of the meeting, there's two things we're going to be focusing on. One is we're taking a scenario planning approach to Focus 40. So rather than pretend that we know exactly what 2040 is going to look like and how many people will live in Boston, how many jobs there'll be, we're proposing three different scenarios of what the future could look like at tomorrow night's meeting. And we're going to be inviting people to learn about those, think about them, tell us if we've missed some element of change that should have been incorporated into them, let us know how their own needs might evolve and change in the face of some of these futures. So that's one piece of it. Another is we've reached the point in the process where we want to start asking people for their own ideas and their own solutions to sort of build a new universe of ideas for things, projects or programs or policies that could improve the T.
And of course, I guess you also want to hear how people would confront some conflicting values about transit. In other words, if we have all this growth in the city and people want bus service, but if the roads are too congested, what do you do about that? And something has to give. Maybe you have to give up some parking spaces.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think there's a lot of different places where the solutions aren't easy. I think you mentioned bus service, and bus service is sort of unique in the MBTA's portfolio, in that while we hire the operators and we own the buses, we're not in a position to sort of unilaterally make improvements because the streets are owned by municipalities, the signals, the curb. So we really need to work with our municipal partners, and we have been working with particularly the City of Boston to try to get dedicated space on roads, the same way that we've seen so much progress with bicycles in recent years. So I think that's an example of a place where there'll be some trade-offs. I think another area that we look at, sort of the downside of this revitalization of the Boston core, is that we certainly are seeing a dramatic spike in housing costs, and low-income populations, which have always been a very dependent customer for the MBTA. What happens in the future if those populations get pushed further and further out of the core of the system where our best services are? What is the appropriate response for the authority? Is it to sort of try to extend the network and make sure we're providing service to everybody, or does it focus on and improving the sort of significant set of assets that we own in the core?
Finally, Scott, even if people can't make it to the open house, there's a way they can participate in this process online too?
That's right. Yeah, we launched a new website for us compared to other MassDOT websites. It's fairly attractive. I think it's called MBTAfocus40.com. So starting tomorrow after the open house, you'll certainly have the same opportunity to go on there and share your ideas, both about the proposed future scenarios and also about your ideas for improving the T.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Scott Hamwey from the Department of Transportation. Still to come, Vida Hispana with Maga Troncoso.